and it's their intrinsic
And then, this food basically robs.
sound feasible, sound like everybody, thanks for watching. Now, for anyone who happens to be Muslim watching this video, if you watch this video in its entirety, I can almost guarantee 100%, if you are real with yourself, by the end of this video, you will no longer be Muslim. Now, I expect to get thumbs down. I expect people to leave negative comments and to not like this video simply because they are Muslim. Because, they was born into Islam, because they went to prison and took their shahada, whatever reason. I expect you to support your religion and stick by your religion because, that's what you are. You feel like, that's your team, you got to stick up for it. But regardless of the fact, if that's your decision by the end of this video, then if you ignore the facts in this video, then you are really only hurting yourself with your decision and your ego. So I know people are not going to like it. I don't want nobody to get offended by this information. It's not information that I made up. I always provide my sources. It's information that is out there that is not being put together and put out to the people, and that's what this video is about. So I think that anybody who is real with themselves, who can, really look in the mirror and say, damn, this makes sense, this doesn't, will really get what this video is about. And it's this whole faith thing. Either you're going to have faith or you're going to have common sense. You cannot have both, because if you have faith, then you forfeit common sense, and you have to remember that. So for those of you who have faith, who stick to your faith, you cannot argue with someone who has facts. It doesn't work. It doesn't fit. So now, if you are here on YouTube, scouring through videos, looking through videos, then that already tells me, you as a Christian or a Muslim or a Hebrew, that you are still looking for validation. You are still looking for the truth. So obviously, whatever religion you are claiming it not in full, not being fully convinced that your religion is the truth. Now, you may not, tell the truth about that. You may not say that in public or around your religious friends, but deep down, you being here is telling me that you are still looking for validation. You are still looking for the truth. Or else, if you were truly a believer in your religion, you wouldn't be here, because honestly, it goes against your religion. So the simple fact that you are here says it. Even though you won't admit it, it tells me you are here for a reason, and you are looking for the truth just like the rest of us. Now, again, either you're going to accept the facts or you're going to accept faith, but you cannot accept both. And that's something that you really have to realize. Now, I had already put out a video on Islam, and to me, that video was enough to really change anybody's mind. But this video really is going to go into the core of Islam and really get into what it's really about, and what that inner core of the leaders of Islam really worship, and what they are really about. And the crazy thing is, it's been in your face this whole time. You see it every day, you see it all the time, but for some reason people can't connect the dots, and that's what we're going to do in this video. So now let's go look at the history of Islam. I went into this in the first video, I'm going to go into it a little bit here. But when you look at the history of Islam, let's go back. Islam is a fairly new religion. When you start going back to BC, there is no Islam, there is no Muslims. Now, the whole thing is this: you had a war between the Persians, the Arabs, and Rome. This war basically lasted from 92 BCE all the way to the 7th century AD. We're talking about, over 600 years of fighting between, these factions. So now the war ended in a status quo ante bellum, which basically means that all parties, all sides agreed to basically go back to the way things was before the war. This was the agreement. This is what they agreed upon. So now the thing is, soon as this war ends, you get basically the Arab invasion. You get Islam. And we know that Islam is using the prophets of Rome, the prophets of the Jews and the Christians. So the question you have to ask yourself is this: why, after such a long war, after, when you look at the power, the might of Rome at that time, why would they risk, this doctrine, coming out with this doctrine, using the prophets of Rome? Why would they risk that? Why would they do that and come out with this doctrine right after this war? And why would Rome allow them to do so? So now you got to ask yourself, you had these Arabs and Persians, you had this long war that was going on, over 600 years of battle, fighting, for them to just stop and say, we're going to basically go back to the way things was before the war started. It doesn't make sense for them to just say, forget everybody who died, forget everybody who got injured, hundreds of years of war, forget about it. We're just going to go back to the way things was. They obviously was fighting for something. And if you remember around this time, the Persians and the Arabs was on the move. They was conquering a lot, which makes more sense for this, whole status quo antebellum, or this whole war, really. But the thing is, it ended with them basically saying, we're going to go back to the way things was. Now, it doesn't make sense unless there was some kind of deal struck. And that's basically what the facts is telling us, that, it wasn't that they just said, forget about it, we're going to go back to the way things was. A deal was struck. They came together, made some kind of agreement that would allow them to come up, to basically use this doctrine to control the Arab people. Now, the reason why I say this is because, it's not a coincidence, everything that happened right after this war ended. You got to pay attention and look. You had, this whole war ends right in the early 7th century. We're talking 630s, 640s, around that time. So you got to think, right after this war, you get the death of Muhammad, supposedly. You get the end of the Persian Empire. All this stuff is taking place right after this status quo antebellum. Death of Muhammad, end of the Persian Empire, the rise of the Arab Empire and Islam. You get Abdul Malik going into Syria and conquering the Byzantines there in Syria, basically converting the people into Islam, changing their language from Syriac and Aramaic to Arabic, enforcing Islam. So the Quran was supposed to be revealed to Muhammad in Arabic. And what happens is whenever he gets these revelations, he goes out to the public and he, recites the new surah to the people, to the public. And he had, one of his Sahabas, companions, or one of the scribes basically write down these verses. So the problem with that is this: during the life of Muhammad, when he had supposed to existed, and right after that, there was no Arabic. There was no written Arabic language. You have a bunch of people who believe that everybody was walking around speaking Arabic during this time, and that it was just a spoken language, and nobody wrote nothing down because we don't have no writing in Arabic during that time. You can't find that. Nobody can find a Quran that's written in Arabic during the time of the Prophet Muhammad. One do not exist. Now, the thing is, you have the Birmingham Quran. I believe it is found in London. They supposedly just had it in a museum for a long time. They come out with this whole Birmingham Quran that's supposed to be written before Muhammad, before the life of Muhammad, which is why a lot of Arab scholars denounce the whole thing. And, it's dated before the life of Muhammad, but you got Arab scholars who say that, you need to test the ink. And instead of testing the paper, the skin that is written on, because the skin hide that is written on is supposed to be dated back to that time, but they believe the ink is newer. And the whole issue with that is there was no color. It's red ink that's written inside of that Quran. There was no colors used in the Quran during that time. And that Quran, the Birmingham Quran, is supposed to be in order and the Quran was not put in order, the way it is today during that time. So, of course, the Arab scholars are not going to like it because it basically turns Islam upside down. If you have a Quran that's basically written before Muhammad, where in the Quran we know today, everything starts with Muhammad. So that whole thing is suspect. But when you look at the earliest Qurans that we have, almost all of them is written in Kufic script. You can't find one that's in Arabic. So there is no Arabic language. Now that alone should get most sane people to, sit back and, question Islam. So now let's think about this. God Almighty, who created the heavens, earth, the whole universe, 6 days. 6 days created everything, rested on the seventh day. But takes 23 years to give a man a message about a doctrine or a religion that he wants him to basically put out. 23 years. Then on top of that, he allows Muhammad to basically die as soon as he finished giving him these revelations. Then allows another 60 to 70 years to pass before we get Islam. It doesn't fit. Then on top of that whole thing, already had allowed hundreds of years for Judaism and Christianity to dominate before he finally says, okay, let's give people Islam. I'm going to take another 23 years to give Muhammad the message. It doesn't fit. This is why I tell people, no disrespect. There's a lot of Muslims who I do respect and, have Muslim friends, but Muslim family members. But the whole thing is, if you were born into this religion, if you was, tricked into this religion due to lack of knowledge, then you have to really go back. And like I said, if you're watching this video, then you obviously have some doubts if you are a Muslim, but you got to start to really use common sense and look at certain things. Some things just don't fit. It don't make sense. God, come on. He should be able to, and the message is in Muhammad. But 23 years, because you don't realize what's going on, it has to do with numerology and the people who is behind this religion that I'm going to get into later on. But anyway, you have Abdul Malik go into Syria and force Arabic on the people. And as I pointed this out in the previous video that I did on Islam, there's a reason that he did that. The word Quran itself is a Christian Judeo meaning. Quran does not mean recite like most Muslims believe it does. It means Pentateuch reader. If you take it back to its earliest language, the language that they spoke during that time, which was Syriac and Aramaic, it means Pentateuch reader. Now it says here, some say Quran means recite. Not true. The word Quran means Pentateuch reader when you go where the word originally came from, Syriac. Here it says, in Syriac, the word Quran is written Quran, meaning Pentateuch reader. Now, the Pentateuch is basically the 5 books of Moses. It is Jewish religion. Quran also means lectionary. Take it back to Aramaic, Syriac, same thing. It means lectionary. Now, here's telling you, the book being a Syro-Aramaic lectionary with hymns and biblical extracts created for use in Christian services. Now, a lectionary is basically like the sermon that the deacon prepared for church. Now, if you go and look at the Syriac Orthodox Church in Antioch, that church I was showing you earlier, if you look at the duties of the deacons, they have 6 duties. If you look at the 4th duty, it says Qurayo. It means reader. Qurayo sounds like Quran to me. Reader. This is where this stuff is coming from. I don't know how much more proof I need to show you people, but I got a lot more. This is the problem. When people get this kind of information, it's just something just clicks in their head that, it's all bullshit. Like, you can't just go through the research yourself and see that this is true. So when you find out this is true, what is your action? People's action to that is, so what? I want to continue to be deceived. And it's ego. It's not that, this is wrong, or it's ego. It's people don't want to feel stupid. They don't want to feel like they've been following and bowing down. It's so many things you got to do, when you are Muslim. I know I followed the Islamic faith for a long time. I considered myself to be a Muslim for a few years when I was trying to figure this whole thing out. Because when I found out Christianity wasn't right, of course, naturally I went to Islam and I found out that was wrong as well. So I understand, making voodoo and so many rituals, 5 times praying, and it's a lot you have to do. And to find out that you are being duped the whole time, praying to the moon and the sun and to Saturn, as I pointed out in the last video. I mean, it's tough for people to accept that, which is why I got a lot of backlash about the first video. A lot of people left negative comments, but as you can see from a lot of people liked the video more than disliked it, and the people who disliked it didn't even really watch the whole video and didn't let the information sink in. They simply didn't like it because they are Muslim. And as I said, if that's the choice you're going to make, who are you hurting but yourself? You're not hurting nobody but you. And at the end of this video, when you see what this stuff is about and what's in here, what's really going on, and how it's been in front of your face all this time, but you can never piece it together, you're going to feel some type of way. But, don't get upset with me because I'm just putting the information out. I have so many people who keep sweating me about this video. Put some more videos about Islam, more Islam, because people can kind of see it. They can't put their finger on what's going on. So that's what this video is really about. But it's something that even if you're not Muslim, you're going to want to get this information. And I think some of you probably are going to have figured this stuff out, or when you see certain things, you're going to be like, oh, okay, that's what that's about. So, let's keep going. So now, as I said, Rome created this religion. They created Islam to control the Arabs, to basically get the Arabs to do their dirty work, the work that they could not do themselves. They seen how powerful the Arabs was and what they could accomplish, putting up a war that lasts hundreds of years against the mightiest empire on the planet, arguably Rome. That was obviously impressive, and they probably couldn't sustain that war any longer. So you got to understand, like I said, a deal was struck. They used Islam, they used the Arabics to do their dirty work. So now, what else happened right after, the war ended, the whole status quo antebellum, we get Islam. What happened after that? You get the whole Arab slave trade. You get the Arabs enslaving many Africans, for hundreds of years. And this was, the doing of Rome. Rome is behind that when you start digging into that whole thing. So a lot of people don't realize how much the Arabs conquered during that time. The caliphates conquered from Spain all the way to Persia and almost everything in between there. They brought down the Sassanid Empire, the Byzantine Empire in Syria. They conquered the Persians, Egypt, Iraq, so many places that they conquered. They were doing the dirty work of Rome. Now, the whole thing with that is it don't matter how much they conquered. The reason why the Arabs got the power that they do have today is because, of course, they are in bed with Rome. But it's not benefiting all of the Arabs. It's benefiting the leaders, and it's benefiting Rome, as we can see. Look over there. You see billionaire, Saudi kings with crazy money. When you start going back, when you look to Persia, this is where you start finding royalty in Persia. You don't hear nothing about no Persian royalty. Arabic or Arab royalty before that time. So that's another thing that happened. Another thing that I think was in this whole deal. You can't find me no Muslim kings or Muslim royalty in BC. They didn't exist. There was no Islam. Then all of a sudden, after this, you get royalty. What makes them royal? Explain that to me. When Africans was already in the Middle East way before Arabs came, and we can prove that. It's already been proven. So who made them royal? And when you understand how things work, you know that it was the popes who was, giving people, making them royal, giving them royal titles of nobility. So this had to be one of the agreed upon deals that the Arabs made with Rome, because who would respect that throne? You got Saudi kings and princes, and they got billions of dollars now. And it's because of this deal that they struck with Rome. And you have to understand, the people, as you can see, are getting duped. They have no clue what's going on. And they think, because they born into this religion, and If you get born into Islam and you stuck in that religion, I mean, it's strict. It takes away largely from your experience on this planet, largely. I mean, it's just, you know how it is. It's so much that you cannot do. And if you do, they'll kill you. So, I mean, it's so much that the Arabs will never know or never experience because of their religion. And we wasn't put here to be subject to that. So it's weird how the Arabs haven't figured this thing out. When you look at the royal family and how they living so good, you know, diamond encrusted Benzes and gold plated Rolls Royces, and the people living in clay and mud brick huts, you know, starving to death. I mean, it's crazy. And they can't seem to figure this stuff out. I mean, when you go to these mosques over there, as I pointed this out in the previous video, when you go to any major mosque over there in these Arab countries, next door you find a Catholic church. I mean, hand in hand, you got mosque, you got Catholic church, and they can't figure this stuff out. They see pictures of the Pope kissing the Quran. They can't figure this thing out. How could the Pope kiss the Quran after, you know, the many thousands of Christians who lost their head to an Arab sword? How can he be kissing the Quran? How can he be consorting with these people when they do so much to, you know, the Christians and the Jews? Look at all the wars between, you know, the Muslims and the Christians and the Jews. So many people dying, so much war and destruction, kids being killed. You've seen bodies in the street, but the leaders of these religions walking around, meeting, kissing and hugging and, you know, shaking hands all the time because they don't have to fight in these wars. They're not losing any family members. You are. You know, all of these Muslims, and it's weird how, you know, they haven't put this together. And we know that in a lot of these Arab countries, they don't have access to the internet. And the ones who do have access to the internet are the ones who, you know, on the bad side. So for anybody with a rational brain, and it's no way you can sit back and look at the news and see what's going on and not understand that these people are being used, you know, for an agenda. And this agenda has been set up hundreds of years ago. And a lot of people can't fathom that it was set up, you know, hundreds of years ago, thousands now. They can't fathom this stuff. They can't fathom it. And that's basically the purpose. Islam is created to basically, you know, be the lapdog for the Catholic Church, to be the errand boys, to basically bring about their whole World War III and their new world order. And that's what we're going to get into in this video. So now, during the whole Arab slave trade, you basically have the Arabs removing the Africans from the Middle East. And of course, the Africans was there long before the whole Arab invasion, long before Islam. And, you know, the Africans that are in the Middle East right now, they still getting treated like shit. And they Muslims, they still getting treated like shit. They still not getting treated like they citizens. And they was there long before any Arabs, long before Islam. The same thing is happening in Israel, where they're basically kicking the Ethiopians out, kicking the Africans out of there, and they got this whole anti-African thing going on over there, when African people was there long before any Jews, and that's a proven fact. They should know that. The people don't know it, but the administrations know that. But of course, you know, this is not a coincidence. This is all by design. So now, as I was saying, Rome basically used the Arabs to do their dirty work. So whenever a region, or whenever a place that they was occupying wasn't acting right, they would send in the Arabs. They would send in the Muslims to go in there and basically conquer it. Then you get the Crusades around, you know, 1095 AD, and all Rome did was sweep in there and basically act like they was saving everybody from the whole Arab conquest. But really, they was all in cahoots. You know, basically what the Crusades was what we're seeing now in Syria with America and ISIS. The same shit, same thing. We control ISIS. We are ISIS. It's the same thing that happened back then. The Catholic Church was, you know, the Arabs. They was Islam and still Islam to this day. And they used them to basically gain control of the Middle East and that area during that time. And it's the same thing today where they basically using ISIS to basically gain control of Syria. It's the same shit. Now, people who follow that time frame, that era, during the whole Crusades, a lot of people believe that the Crusades happened because Rome was trying to get rid of Islam, trying to get rid of the Muslims, and that wasn't the case. The whole thing about the Knights Templar going in there and fighting in the Crusades, it really had nothing to do with the Muslims. They was going there, it was a show, and it was wiping out Christian factions that was basically against the papacy, and there was a lot of them. A lot of people didn't agree with it being the Pope and all these rules and laws that the Pope was instilling, and they were speaking out against the Pope. And it was basically same thing with, as I said, with the whole ISIS thing. We don't like that. They didn't like that Syria is basically going against the dollar and, selling oil that's not being backed by the dollar. So it's like, since you are against us, since, the leader, the president of Syria is against this whole New World Order thing. They went in there acting like they're trying to save people or whatever, or act like they're trying to stop ISIS, and really they're trying to get rid of the administration. It's the same thing back then. They're trying to get rid of these administrations that was against the papacy. So even though they're saying that the Muslims and the Arabs was in these places back then, really when the Crusades came through, when the Knights Templar came through, they came through there to basically get rid of, the establishment and put somebody in place that would act right. It's the same thing. And stuff, it has been happening for hundreds of years. Now, a lot of people want to know why the Knights Templar was wiped out, even though we know they back now, but it's not the same. Now, as I said, the Knights Templars was not against Islam because members of the Knights Templar was Muslims. So now, that's one of the things that I want people to understand in this video, because we're going to be getting into it later on. Understand that there was Muslims in the Knights Templar. So I want to read from this thing that's talking about the membership, historical fact. Authentically, the original Knights Templar rejected the idea of the Crusades as supposedly being to eliminate Muslims or eradicate Islam. This historical fact is proven by the Temple Rule of 1129 AD, in which the Templar order criticized that the Crusades did not do what it should, that is to defend, but strove to plunder, despoil, and kill. Rule 2. It clearly specified that the only real purpose of temple warfare was to remove from the land enemies of Christ, not to kill Muslims. Rule 14. And the original Latin says only to strike enemies, providing no specific intent to kill. Rule 57. Quite contrary to popularized misconceptions, the Templars fully understood that Muslims were not necessarily enemies, that the real enemies of Christ could be even evildoers pretending to be Christians, and that the enemies of Christ were generally the same as the enemies of Islam. Indeed, evildoers are essentially the enemies of all faith, opposed to the principle of religion itself, and are thus the enemies of God. Therefore, the Templars were never crusaders against Muslims and did not agree with any such philosophy. Rather, the Knights Templar were holy warrior monks fighting for good against evil, regardless of which religion may or may not be involved. The most conclusive evidence that Muslims were in fact accepted in membership in the Templar order was codified in the Temple Rule of 1129 AD, which was expanded by the later hierarchical rules added from circa 1150 to 1250 AD. One key amendment, circa 1200 AD, specifically provides if a brother goes out from the house and enters into another religion, it would do no harm if he returns to rejoin the house, but he will not be held by anything that to that religion, nor to us also, for he has returned from the one and from the other. Rule 630. Now you can see here it says Knights of the Order of Saladin, which was a Muslim Templar. So you have to take away from this and understand you had Muslims in the Knights Templar. The main reason for that, as I said, was because this whole thing was for Rome to basically go and get rid of people who was against this Pope. And since they were using Muslims and using Christians, of course, it didn't matter who was in. And we know like the Knights Templar was kind of like a secret service, was supposed to be a secret service kind of sort of for the Pope. But they was good, as you can read, and this is the reason why they was wiped out, because they wasn't really, I mean, they knew all the dirty stuff. They did all the dirty work, they knew a lot of stuff, and they wasn't really going for exactly what the Pope was trying to do down the road. And yeah, they was wiped out, but you know, they came back and they are today exactly what Rome wanted them to be back then, and we're going to get into that because it has a lot to do with Islam. So now, as I keep saying, Rome basically is using Islam, using the Muslims to do their dirty work. Because think about it, who else would you get? Who else would you use to blame all of this, you know, these terror attacks on? Who else would you use? Can't use the monks, too peaceful. Can't use short, funny Asian people. Can't use skinny people in India. Africa never attacked anybody. You know, who would you use? Can't use Eskimos in Alaska. You got to find a people who is relentless, who travel deep, who can strategically attack places in the Middle East and basically spread the agenda of Rome, but at the same time keep its own people in check. And the Arabs was perfect. It was perfect for the agenda of Rome, which is why they made that deal, plain and simple. So when you look at all of these terror attacks lately, always go back to Islam and always go back to the Muslims, because as I said, they are using them to fulfill their agenda of a one world government. I mean, look at bin Laden, goes back to Islam. You got bin Laden, you got the whole 9/11 thing, and you know, the whole Al-Qaeda, come on. All goes back to Islam. Goes right back there. Everything, you got Saddam Hussein, you know, still Islam goes back to there. The Iraqi insurgents, this is still Islam. You got ISIS now. You got the, you know, the false flag terror attacks in America where they're saying that these people, you know, worshiped ISIS and was somehow trying to be connected with ISIS. All of it is going back to Islam in some way, shape, or form to bring about something that will fit their agenda. And we're seeing that more and more. We know these false flags attacks, they're trying to take away our weapons. You know what's going on over there in Syria, because they're trying to get rid of that regime and put somebody in place that will follow orders. It was the same thing with Saddam. You don't act right, they put you out. So we can see, as I keep saying, that Islam is the scapegoat of Rome, the scapegoat of the ruling elite. And if you don't see that now, you will definitely understand it and know it by the end of this video. So now I know Muslims are going to say that just because you have these bad people who claim Islam do some despicable things, that doesn't represent the whole of Islam. And they are correct to say that. But you got to understand that you cannot deny the history of Islam. Just because you accepted it and you take it, and you and, you know, a bunch of other Muslims, you accept it and you take it in its right context, and you try to follow what you think the religion means and you go with it. Just because you've done those things and other people do those things doesn't deny the history of where the religion originated. It doesn't deny it. It just means that you bought into the lie. That's all it means. It means you bought into what you was told and you're following it based upon what you were supposed to be following it. And the people who originated it, the people who are behind it, are using it to further their agenda. And this is why they carry the religion. But you can't see past it because you are stuck with what they wanted you to be stuck with in the first place, and that's believing in the religion. So you can look at it and say, yeah, these people have nothing to do with the true Islam, with the true religion, but you cannot deny where it came from and who brought it about. And you can go into the Quran, you can go into the Hadiths, you can read what it's saying, but excuse me, you cannot prove it. You can't prove it. None of it is based upon proven facts or proven history, which is why, just like the Bible, it requires faith. So It's not like this history is not there, that it can't be proven. You have this long war that ends in basically a truce almost. Status quo ante bellum. Basically, each party saying we're going to go back to the way things was. Then consequently after that, you get Islam. That's using the same prophets as Rome, who they just was in a war with. I mean, it's not a coincidence. You got to really think about that. This is a proven fact. This is proven history that we can go back, that we can look to, that Rome admits to, that history admits to, and it's there, it's proven. So we can call it all a coincidence and just say that it's just coincidence. You know, this shit just happened. But when you look at everything else that goes with it, everything that follows it, I mean, it fits too perfectly with this whole thing being a setup. And as we go along, you'll see, you know, even more clearly that that's exactly what it is. Okay, so now let's start getting into the really good stuff, the good information. Now, as I said, I have a video that I did on Islam before. It's called The Ignorance of the Black Muslim. You should check that video out if you didn't see it. And it really gets into more a lot of stuff that you should know about Islam. But like I said, after this video should be enough for you to be like, oh hell no. And I think that the first video is a good video for people who like to do research, for any Muslims who may be doing research which is against your religion. But still, as I said, if you are here because you are looking for validation, or you feel like you're being duped and something is wrong and this religion is not what you thought it was. But you should definitely watch that video, do that research. Don't follow me. As I say, don't listen to me. Don't listen to nobody. There's nothing better than doing your own research and figuring this stuff out for yourself. I'm here to simply give you my research and what I have found and where I know, your path is going to lead if you are real with yourself. I don't understand how so many people keep saying that, I do research, I study, I read. Then if you actually do these things, there's no way that you don't come to the same conclusion as me and many other scholars who actually, do the research and read, who learn Arabic and learn how to read certain passages and words. If you go and research something, you got to really get into it, and you can't be biased as far as the information. If you're researching to fit the religion because you want to be in it, then you're being biased. You're cheating yourself, because you're only looking for information to support the religion. If that's the case and you want support for the religion, just be in the religion. Don't go look for nothing. Just be, true to your faith, stick with it. You're trying to go out and do research to find stuff to support your religion because you want to stay in it, just stay in it. But if you be true and real to yourself and you go out and you look for the right information, the critical information, the information that makes sense, then you're going to come to the same conclusion as me. You're going to find out everything, and it's going to turn Islam upside down for you. But if you haven't been watching the news and paying attention to history over the last 16 years, then, you can see clearly what's going on with Islam. But, I want to get into a man named Albert Pike, who most of you know by now, who do research. But before I get into Albert Pike, I want to go back a little bit further and get into, not too far further, I want to get into the whole Lincoln assassination. And I know you're going to say, what the hell does this have to do with Islam? But trust me, bear with me for a second. I'm going to, how I do if you watch my videos. I'm going to stray away for a little bit, and I'm going to get into this whole thing, and it's going to make sense because it all fits and it's all going to come back. And when it's done, it'll make sense. But I'm going to go away from this Islam thing for a little bit and get into this whole Masonic, Albert Pike, Lincoln assassination stuff that's going to bring everything together, and it's going to make a lot of sense. So now, as I said, before I get into Albert Pike, I want to get into the whole Lincoln assassination a little bit. Now, we know John Wilkes Booth. John Wilkes Booth was a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle, just like Albert Pike. And also like Albert Pike, he was a Scottish Rite Freemason. Now, anybody who studies the Lincoln assassination knows that almost everybody in the Lincoln administration wanted Lincoln dead. They wanted him gone. And a lot of them was complicit in his assassination and helped with the cover up. Now, General Lafayette Baker. He was basically summoned to Washington to help out with the whole Lincoln assassination, the case. And within like 2 days of him being there, he already arrested 4 people and had a lead on Wilkes Booth and his accomplice. Now remember, they had supposedly tracked down Wilkes Booth and his accomplice, David Harold, to a barn. And Harold basically surrendered and they took him away, but Wilkes Booth put up a fight, supposedly didn't want to go quietly, and he was shot and killed by Sergeant Thomas Corbett, nicknamed Boston Corbett. And we know they took Harold away, and he was later hanged along with 3 other accomplices for being complicit in the assassination of Lincoln. These are actual pictures from the hanging, by the way. Now we know that General Baker made sure it was a military tribunal so he could control exactly how the trial went and what questions and everything would be answered, because if they had a regular trial, like a regular civilian trial, because these dudes was tried as, military people. Some of them was in the military. So he wanted to make sure they had a military tribunal so he can control it. So everybody else who was in on the whole thing, it wouldn't come out in trial. But, they was assassinated, they was, all hanged and killed. And General Baker basically received a large part of that $100,000 reward for capturing, those people. Now understand, Wilkes Booth's body was never photographed. Nobody took any pictures. Remember, they took pictures of the men who was hanged, who was supposed to be accomplices or, complicit in the assassination of Lincoln. They took pictures of those bodies, but there's no picture of Wilkes Booth's body. Now, the Secretary of War, the War Secretary, Edward Stanton, he, who a lot of people believe was also complicit in Lincoln's assassination, he hid the keys to where Booth's body was supposedly stored. He didn't allow anybody access to it, and he also hid 18 pages of Wilkes Booth's diary. Now remember, his diary was supposed to be coded, but he had in there that the nation was controlled by a group of Scottish Rite Freemasons who work for the British Crown. Now, the weird thing is, later they also found a diary of General Lafayette Baker, same dude who supposedly caught Booth and had the 4 men hanged. They found his diary. It also was coded, but it also said the same thing, that the nation is controlled by a group of Scottish Rite Freemasons and they work for the British Crown. And his diary was actually written inside of a British military journal. So now, many believe that Albert Pike was also, a part of the whole Lincoln assassination. After the Civil War, he was charged with treason. He was charged with treason for getting the Indians to attack the North, to attack Union soldiers. Now, remember, Albert Pike was a Confederate general. Now, a lot of people don't know he was also a lawyer. He actually helped a lot of Indians get back their land or beat a lot of cases that was going against them, from the North. Remember, the North was always trying to take Indian land, and he helped them out with a lot of cases. Now, he basically fled to Canada when he was charged with treason until Andrew Johnson became president. One of the first things that Andrew Johnson did when he became president was to give Albert Pike a pardon for his war crimes. He pardoned him, gave him a full pardon. So now, what does this have to do with Islam? Of course, as I said, we're going to get into that. It's all going to make sense. So now, let's look at it. We have Wilkes Booth, who was a Scottish Rite Freemason, who put in his diary that America, the nation, was being controlled by Scottish Rite Freemasons who worked for the British Crown. We have General Lafayette Baker saying exactly the same thing in his diary that just so happens to be in a British military journal. You also have Albert Pike, who was a Confederate general and co-founder, Chief Judicial Officer, and Imperial Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. He co-founded the KKK. He was also a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Sovereign Grand Commander of Freemasonry and considered the highest ranking Freemason of all time. Pike died in 1891. He was buried in Oak Hill Cemetery in Washington, D.C. until 1911, when the House of the Temple was built in Washington and they moved his crypt there. Now, the House of the Temple has a huge atrium to the Supreme Council of 33rd degrees. To the right of the atrium is a staircase where you can see a statue of Albert Pike. Those stairs lead up to the temple for the 33rd degree Freemasons. Underneath those stairs is supposed to be the crypt of Albert Pike. Now, to the left of the atrium is a memorial dedicated to Albert Pike. Now, the House of the Temple is the headquarters for Scottish Rite Freemasonry. Let me say that again. The House of the Temple is the headquarters for Scottish Rite Freemasonry. It is exactly 13 blocks due north of the White House, and it would be the capstone on the pyramid of the Masonic layout of Washington, D.C. So now, what does that tell you? Do you understand what's going on? Do you see what's going on? Now, forget what Booth said about Scottish Rite Freemasonry's running America. The same thing that Baker said, Lafayette Baker wrote, Scottish Rite Freemasons running America. It's right there in front of you. All of the mystery, all of the people talking all this supposedly conspiracy theories about, the Illuminati, Freemasonry, them running everything, and it's right in front of your face. There it is, plain as day. You have a whole temple. I mean, first of all, just get it out your head that this is not going on. This is happening. We play with this stuff and we speculate that, well, maybe the Masons run stuff or maybe they don't. It's here. What do you think all this stuff is about, the whole Masonic layout? You think they did that because they in some kind of, club? People is so passive and we seeing stuff that's right in front of our face and it's telling us exactly what's going on and what these people are about, and everybody just want to ignore it. How can you go and lobby and complain and protest about anything in Washington when you see their whole Masonic layout and everything that's supposed to come with that? How can they, and you need to understand, a lot of your senators, a lot of your congressmen, a lot of your council members, a lot of these people are members of this whole Scottish Rite Freemasonry, and you can go down there and you sit out there and wait and you see who comes out of there and it's going to surprise you. But understand, how can you have the tomb, the crypt of a man who was a Confederate general, who also was accused, he was never tried, but he was accused and suspected of being involved in the assassination of an American president? How can you have that right there in Washington? I mean, what is that place? What is it? Like, we speculate and we play with this stuff, but when it's right in front of your face, everybody want to just ignore it like it don't exist. People look at that Masonic layout of Washington and they just ignore it. And, everybody running around talking about election and this and that. I mean, this stuff has been here for centuries. And nobody wants to take it seriously after everything that's going on, after all the information that's put out, after America has basically been taken over by this whole banking system. And we look at this stuff and nobody wants to accept it when it's right there. Now, I remember the first time I went to visit the White House. I remember the first time I ever went there, there was this dude out there who was talking about the Masonic layout of Washington. This dude was handing out like pamphlets and stuff, talking about Masonry and talking about, the Masonic layout and the presidents and all this stuff. And everybody was just like looking at this dude like he was crazy. I mean, you know how people be when you see somebody acting funny. A lot of people just walk past them and kind of ignore them. I was standing there listening to the boy. Everything he was saying, it's a white dude too. Everything he was saying on point. He was making 100% sense. And I was like, damn, he killing it. I was shocked they was letting him stand out there and spit that stuff. But, nobody was listening to him. He wasn't really drawing no crowd. He had these big signs and stuff. And, he was like into it and he was like sweating. I never forget that. He was really like trying to get the information out. And the thing is, it seems like that, we are sitting back waiting for it to happen, waiting for the end to come, waiting for them to do whatever it is they're going to do. We know that this government is crooked. A lot of people know that they're trying to, reach their agenda, New World Order and this and that. But it seems like the people is just waiting for it to happen. I guess people feel like if it ever comes down to it, if it ever go down, that we can beat them, the people. It's more of us than them. And that, if they ever try something, we'll all come together at that moment and we'll just, win, victory. They won't be able to defeat the people. But you got to understand, whenever that day comes, if it comes, whenever it happens, whatever they do, they will win. They're going to win, period, point blank. And they're not even going to try anything. They're not even going to do anything that major unless they knew 100% that it's going to lead to victory. And while we sitting back not doing nothing, they are doing everything in their power for that outcome, to get to that goal, to reach that agenda, to win. And we are doing nothing to stop them at all. We are doing absolutely nothing. And I'm saying all this because there is a Masonic headquarters of Freemasonry, Scottish Rite Freemasonry, that is represented as a capstone for this whole government, for this whole organization, represented as the capstone on this pyramid for our government. And when you look on the back of $1, you have the pyramid with the capstone, the all-seeing eye. Around that pyramid spells out Annuit Coeptis, Noro Ordo Seclorum, and when you put a star over it, it spells out Mason. Now, the whole thing means favor our undertaking, new order of the age. What is all that? What is it? What's going on? And we see this shit every fucking day, and nobody wants to just, what can you do? You're just one person, what can you do? I know that's how a lot of people feel, what can I do? And that's how they want us to feel. But it's amazing to me that as us as a whole, as a collective, didn't stomp this out yet. And it's because we are racially divided and we are religiously divided, and they are conquering us because they are the one who has divided us. And it's crazy when you get into it. And one of the things I'm into deeply is the whole American history, American politics and all that. But that right there, it's so much more deeper than that. But I want to try to stick on this whole Islam thing because that's the topic. But it's a lot deeper. And if you've seen some of my videos, I kind of get into it more. Okay, so it's a Masonic lodge, 13 blocks from the White House, symbolizing a capstone on the pyramid of the Masonic layout of Washington, with the crypt of Albert Pike, a very high-ranking Freemason, Scottish Rite Freemason, and Grand Wizard of the KKK, co-founder of the KKK, and also a Confederate general who used the Indians to attack Union soldiers. I mean, it just don't get no weirder than having this dude here and having it being attached to Freemasonry and Masonry, and having Mason on our dollar coated with the pyramid and capstone. It's weird. This dude wrote a book called Morals and Dogma, where he's basically saying that Lucifer is the light bearer and the light of Freemasonry that all Masons, ascribe to. This dude is who these Masons look up to. And we know that presidents and we know that congressmen, they walk around with that Masonic pen. You go down Washington. We know that a lot of these people are Masons. So it makes the whole thing weird, and it makes the validity of Wilkes Booth's diary and Lafayette's diary valid. I mean, it makes you really question all that for anybody who may not understand, what's going on. If you don't believe it, then when you see all this, you have to be like, yeah, the shit is real. Now, we know Albert Pike. Well, a lot of people probably don't know. Pike also has a statue in Judiciary Square in Washington, D.C., where a lot of people lobbied to get it removed. A lot of black people tried to get it removed, but the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, basically saved it. And, if you know anything about that league, it's supposed to be controlled by Britain, to tell you the truth. But they saved Pike's statue. He is the only Confederate officer to have a statue in Washington, D.C. Why? What did he do to deserve that? So even if you don't want to get into that part of it that I'm saying, the whole Masonic stuff, I mean, some of this stuff is like, come on, right in front of your face. Why does this dude have a statue in Washington, D.C.? Come on. And Muslims, when you see what's coming, it's going to blow your mind. You need to understand what you are into. So now the KKK was founded in 1866. That's the year after slavery ended, by 6 Confederate officers, including Albert Pike and Nathan Bedford Forrest. A lot of you know who he is. He was also a general and a Freemason. So now, what is the KKK based on? Where does it come from? It comes from the Knights Templar, and that's easy to see. Now, the Knights Templar used to be the Order of the Temple, or the Knights of the Temple of Solomon. Now, Pike even admits in his book that Freemasonry begins or started with or came from the Knights Templar, and I would think he mean the Scottish Rite Freemasonry. We know it all comes from Kemet when you get into it. Now, anybody who studies Freemasonry understands that they claim to be founded on the building of the Temple of Solomon. So you can connect all this stuff together. We're talking about the Knights Templars, the KKK, Masonry. All this stuff comes together. So understand, Ku Klux is Greek for golden circle. And as I said, Albert Pike, Wilkes Booth was both members of the Order of the Golden Circle, or the Knights of the Golden Circle. So for anybody who says that Pike had nothing to do with the founding of the KKK, is right in the very name that he had his hand in it, Ku Klux. Klan goes to, the Scottish term. Klan is a Scottish term. Every black person is familiar with the burning cross of the KKK. We all know about it, that burning cross. That is called the Cran Terra. It is Scottish dialect for burning cross. It's what the Scottish clans use to summon their clansmen to arms. All this stuff connects together. Now, I've shown you how it connects. I've shown you that it goes back to Freemasonry. I've shown you that the name goes back to a whole secret society that Pike was in. We know that the Muslims was a part of the Knights Templar. All this stuff is connected. Now, you can't get into the Knights Templar without the Pope. The Pope was the one who sanctioned it. Pope Honorius sanctioned the Knights Templar and gave them their code of conduct. So it wouldn't be no Muslims allowed in it unless he sanctioned it and allowed them to be in there. Now, when the war was over, the whole status quo antebellum I was talking about earlier, as I said, Rome basically used the Muslims and Arabs to conquer into places that they couldn't get into. Like I said, you can't go around with missionaries preaching the word, saying Jesus saves, Jesus this, and then have Roman soldiers going around conquering and killing everything. So they had to use the Muslims, they had to use Islam to do it. And that's what they did. They used the Muslims, they used Islam to go in there and conquer in places that they couldn't, get their foot in there, and they struck that deal. Now, the whole thing is, when you go back and look at Islamic conquest during that time, when you go and look at the map, you can see that these are basically the areas that the Muslims conquest. This is basically what they conquered. But when you go ahead and look at the lands or the empire of Rome, it would seem as if the Muslims conquered the Roman Empire, and we know that's not the case. So when you look at it, it's kind of suspect. It's how could they, during this time, the 7th century, had conquered all of these places that supposedly occupied or a part of the whole Roman Empire. And when you look up here, you can see that they didn't conquer Rome, they didn't conquer Greece, they didn't conquer England, but everything else they had their hand into. So you see, they was in Spain. It was in all these places that Rome wanted to get into and conquer, but they couldn't get in there. So they used the Arabs to get in there and, and do it for them. So the Arabs did all that conquering. They conquered into places that Rome wanted to get into. And basically the Crusades was a smokescreen for the exchange of power that took place. So basically when the Crusades happened, they came in there and they basically wiped out who they really wanted to wipe out, when they put in power somebody who would listen to Rome and be for the Pope. And, they basically transferred power from, the Muslims to Rome, or they put Muslim leaders in place, but really Rome was going to be, ruling the whole thing. And that's basically what we see today in a lot of these places that's ran by Muslims. They answer to Rome, they answer to the Pope. The whole thing was smoke and mirrors. It was a smokescreen, and it was, a good power move on the part of Rome as far as taking over lands they couldn't get in there. Because as I said, you can't be walking around preaching Christ and talking about forgiveness and all this and that, and then conquering lands. So now Rome looks like the hero, and Islam and the Arabs look like the outcasts, and exactly the way they wanted it, and it worked for Rome. Okay, so now let's bring this stuff all together. Let's put the whole Islamic connection into it and put this stuff together. So now we all know this is the symbol for Islam. This is the symbol Muslims use. So now, what is this? This is the original costume for the KKK. Look at the symbol. You see, it's the same symbol for Islam, just turned a different way. Now, it's something that the KKK has that's, weird with the circuits. They have this weird connection to the circuits. It's a long story. So now we see this whole identical logo. This is a real picture of Albert Pike wearing a uniform that looks similar to the original KKK uniform. You see it clear as day. It looks similar. So now, when we get into this whole thing, you're going to see that it's a major connection to Islam and the leaders of Freemasonry that's been right in front of your face, but a lot of people, they don't want to see it, but there's no way you cannot see it. So now understand, make this connection. This is the holy book for the KKK. It's called the Quran. Anybody who studies the KKK knows they put KL in front of anything they have an affiliation with. Quran. Sounds like Quran. They have a hymnal. How you got the Bible and hymnal, songbook. They have a hymnal. It's called the Musiclan. Muslim, Musiclan. The Musiclan. Put the connection together. Now we know this is the symbol for Islam. It's also the symbol right here, the original, the old symbol for the KKK. But where else do we find this symbol? We find it with the Shriners. Now we know that it's the logo for the Shriners. You see it all over the place. And when you look at the AAONMS, which stands for the Ancient Arabic Order Noble Mystic Shrines, or when you unscramble it, it spells out a Mason. A Mason. How many black Muslims knew that they was in the KKK? A lot of y'all don't understand that. You in the KKK if you're a black Muslim, because that's who they affiliated with. These are the people who is controlling it. This is what this stuff is all leading up to, as you will see. They are running the whole show. So now understand, here is the Abu bin Adem Shrine Mosque. Look at the top. It's the same thing you see at the top of these Islamic mosques. Just look at it. Does this guy look like a Muslim to you? Look at this guy. He's a part of this mosque with the Islamic symbol at the top of it. Does he look like a Muslim? Does this guy look like a Muslim? Why are these people wearing fezzes that says Islam, that symbolizes the Muslims? Why are they wearing it? Just take a look. Understand what you are seeing. Understand. Does this look like a Muslim? Do these people look like Muslims to you? So y'all can't put this connection together, and it's been in front of your face for years. Now, if you watch my videos, I always talk about how when you go into a Masonic lodge, you see on the altar 3 books: the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran. Now you understand why. These are the 3 books, 3, keep that number in your head, that they're going to use to bring about their whole New World Order. They're capping that capstone on the temple, and, completing the whole agenda. That's what it's about. And these 3 books, where they hide everything, as I have been revealing to you throughout, my videos. You got to understand that it's an agenda. This is what the book is about. Trying to tell you something, but people don't read it. Now, when you look at the whole Shriners logo, you see that Arabian sword there in the whole Shriners logo. That whole sword that they use to cut off Christians' head. It's the same sword that you see in the jihadist symbol when you go over there to the Middle East. You see that Arabian sword there to symbolize jihad. It's a 3-step process, plain and simple. The first step was the Torah. The second step is the Bible, and we are in the 3rd step, which is using the Quran to basically bring about their new world order. It's just that simple. It all began 2001, September 11th. And I was talking about this in the previous video. When you look at the Masonic symbol, it's called Memphis Mezrah. It basically means cutting off the head of the old order and bringing about a new order. What happened? That's what it was. Here's the symbol right here. See that Arabic sword? See that Arabian sword there? That's what it means. 2001 was the beginning of the third phase, the beginning. You got 3 world wars. Everybody know about Albert Pike. Supposedly have writing the letters to Giuseppe Mazzini talking about the 3 world wars that would bring about a new world order. First, I mean, this is before the wars even happened, by the way. So, first 2 wars went off exactly the way it says in the letters, and Third World War is happening exactly the way it said. You can believe it or not, but the fact that this stuff was still written so long ago, before the whole Muslim thing, and it's happening exactly the way the letter says, should tell you something if you don't believe it. It's on point, and it's supposed to have been written by Albert Pike. So, that's weird too. So 3 phases. It's 3 strikes we got, and it's weird that baseball is played on a Masonic diamond, and we got 3 strikes, 3 books here. Played on a Masonic diamond. 3 strikes and we out. 3 strikes and we're done. And we got 2 strikes already. 1 strike left. And we sitting back and we watching that ball, and it's like nobody is intending to swing. We think it's a ball. We're gonna take it and we're gonna strike the fuck out, and they're gonna win. And I'm gonna tell you now, and I'm gonna keep it 100% real. They're gonna win anyway. There's really nothing, we can do about it. We're basically done unless people wake up, and it just don't seem like it's going to happen. I don't understand how people can see what's going on and not want to get more engaged into waking the rest of the people up. But this is where your Islam comes from. These are the people who control it, and they're showing you. Look at the Moors. Everybody want to get into Moors, and I have a respect for the Moors. They helped civilize, the world during the Dark Ages. But you got to realize these are not the same Moors. These people you see walking around today. These ones who claim Islam and swear to Islam. These ones who's trying to basically get you to stay under the oppression of the master. Plain and simple. They used the knowledge of the Egyptians and gave it to the white man. They should have used that knowledge to help black people instead of giving it to the white man to build all the stuff that they built. They should have used it to help black people. That's how I feel about the whole Moors thing. And in the core, they worship basically the hidden knowledge of Islam. And you see they have a fez, just like the Shriners have a fez. It's all the same. They always talking about legal stuff. Use the law this and that, keeping you in this whole system. How the hell are you going to basically try to beat them at their own system? They crooks, they criminals. If they don't want to give you something, they just won't do it. They'll kill you, they'll get rid of you. So you can't walk up there saying, I know the law this, the law that. The law don't mean shit. It's ran by criminals. So all the stuff the Moors be kicking that sound all well and good, but it's trying to get you to basically accept the establishment and try to find little ways around it. But really, they sit up there talking about Islam, and they worship the true, the hidden meaning of Islam, as I've been showing you so far in this video, which is, basically all this stuff. And it's even deeper than this, and, too deep for me to go into now in this video. So as I said, I'm not trying to disrespect anybody. There's a lot of Muslims who I respect. I respect anybody who is ignorant in this and, trying to stick with it because it's something that they believe in. I have respect for that if you are doing it truthfully in ignorance and not in just, trying to, prove somebody wrong or ego or just trying to, stick up for your team because you are a Muslim. Some people just don't understand this stuff. But those of you who come to YouTube, who come here or who are here, like I said, you are obviously here for a reason, because deep down you truly do not believe and you are still looking for validation. Plain and simple. So I want you to see this is the hidden core of Islam and who's running it. Look at the fezzes. Follow the fez. Look at the people who wear it. Look at who's controlling it. Why do they have so many Islamic symbols on it? Do you think these people are Muslim? They are not Muslims. These are the people who is controlling it, who is running it, and they are trying to bring about this whole new world order. I mean, this whole ISIS thing that's going on right now is, out of control, and it should have been under control if we was really the America that we're supposed to be. Now, do you think this right here is a coincidence? Take a look. Fez says ISIS. Take a look at the building. ISIS. So you have these Shriners who go back to Freemasonry and, Knights Templar, all this stuff that I was just telling you. You have, this stuff was here. This whole ISIS stuff that I'm showing you with the Shriners was here before it. ISIS. So put the stuff together. Come on. It's not a coincidence. Put it together. It's the same shit. They're trying to tell you something. These are the people who is running it. I don't understand how people fall for this stuff. You're smarter than that. I know y'all smarter than that. I know it. And y'all don't realize it, but you are here because something in you wants to wake up. Let it wake up. Get the information, study. Let this bullshit go. Come on. What are they doing that is that great? Now, don't get me wrong. There were some great Muslims who did some good things for black people. And, that's true. But that doesn't make the religion real. It makes them good people who did good things for black people. It doesn't make Islam correct. It doesn't. So you can get emotional. You can get upset. It's not going to change anything. The only thing that's going to change is the fact that you are still stuck in a religion that you know nothing about, and your ego is keeping you down. Let it go. Let it go. A smart person who just seen this video and watched the whole thing will understand. It's the truth. Do your own research. Don't listen to nothing. I'm not here to persuade no one. I'm putting out the information. But I want you to be in something having full knowledge, especially if you're black, because we are so behind right now. And so many people are getting swept up in this Islam. As I showed in the first video, they are forcing Islam on the Africans. Muslims keep saying Islam is on the rise all over the world. Africans keep converting because they are forcing them. If you don't believe it, I proved it in that first video. Go check it out. So this was a video. I had to do this. I had to put it out so you can understand and see what's going on and what is at the inner core of Islam and how it came about and who's really running it. But come on, the reason why I didn't do so many videos on Islam and I keep pounding at Christianity and stuff like that and at the Hebrews is because Islam is so obvious to any real scholar or anybody who studies antiquity. It just popped up. It's new. Come on. It's new. Do some research. Get off your knees. Get up, stand up, be a man and do some research. Be a woman. Don't even get me into that. How you women can take that stuff. Like, come on. Do you know how they treat y'all? I don't get how any woman could be a Muslim. That's just crazy to me. But like I said, this was my video. And got a lot more to come. I want to thank y'all for watching. Like and subscribe, share the video, and see you guys next video. Thanks a lot.